When my wife Margaret passed away, I thought the hardest pain I would ever feel was losing her, but nothing prepared me for the words my own son spoke to me the night before her funeral. "Dad, you can't bring Mom back, but Megan's birthday only comes once a year." His voice was flat, casual, as if he were talking about a business meeting he couldn't reschedule. Those words cut deeper than the shovel that would soon drop dirt over my wife's coffin. I held the phone so tightly I thought it might break. "Kyle, your mother's funeral is tomorrow morning. Once. In a lifetime. How can you even think of comparing that to a party?" There was laughter in the background, Megan's voice squealing about decorations and a band setting up. My son barely lowered his tone. "Dad, look, I loved Mom, but I can't let Megan down. We've been planning this for months. You understand, right?" And then he hung up. I stared at the deadline for a long time, unable to move. The house was too quiet. Margaret's coffee mug still sat on the counter, lipstick on the rim from the last morning she drank from it. Her favorite floral curtain swayed gently in the draft. Every corner of this house whispered her presence, and yet she was gone. And my son, the boy we had raised, loved, sacrificed everything for, had chosen a birthday party over saying goodbye to his mother. The next morning, I stood alone in a black suit, straightening my tie for the third time. The funeral program lay on the counter, Kyle's name printed as a pallbearer. My pen scratched across it, striking his name out in thick, deliberate strokes. At the cemetery, people looked around, expecting him. My sister-in-law Patricia kept whispering, "Where's Kyle? Surely he'll be here any moment." I practiced my response. Important commitments. The words tasted bitter. Only 23 people gathered to honor the woman who had given everything to her family. Neighbors, friends from her garden club, distant relatives. But her own son, the pride of her life, was nowhere in sight. As the pastor spoke of eternal love, I felt the emptiness where Kyle should have been. Dirt fell on the polished wood of her coffin, each thud burying not just Margaret but the illusions I had clung to about the son she adored. Driving home, my knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. The passenger seat where Margaret always sat was empty, her scent still faint in the fabric. The radio played her favorite song and I snapped it off. Even the silence was heavy. When I pulled into our driveway, I sat there for a long moment, staring at the house we had built together over 40 years. The home she had filled with laughter, meals, warmth. Now, it felt like nothing but walls and memories. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. No humming from the kitchen, no clatter of pots, just silence, thick and suffocating. I hung my keys on the hook she had insisted on putting by the door. The small act felt monumental now. I sank into my leather armchair, the one she always said clashed with her curtains, and stared at our wedding photo on the mantel. Margaret, radiant in her grandmother's dress, smiling at me, with trust and love. We had promised each other everything. I had delivered, perhaps too well. The memories poured in uninvited. Kyle's first steps across the living room, birthday parties with handmade decorations, because we couldn't afford store-bought ones. Margaret working double shifts while I built my construction business. Every sacrifice we made had been for him, for Kyle. Later that night, I found Margaret's Bible on the nightstand. A folded note slipped out. In her handwriting, "My dearest Alan, please don't let Kyle forget us. We gave him everything we had. I hope that was enough. All my love, M." My hands trembled, tears blurred the words, and in that moment, something inside me hardened. For too long we had given. For too long, Kyle had taken. Tomorrow he would come back asking for something, as he always did. And when he did, I would be ready. I didn't sleep. Grief kept me awake. Resolve kept me upright. At dawn, I brewed coffee I wouldn't taste, and carried a banker's box to my desk, the mahogany desk Margaret used to dust, while teasing me for hoarding receipts. Today, the hoarding had a purpose. I opened file after file, the past 15 years stacked in quiet accusation. Kyle education. Tuition checks photocopied in neat rows. 4 years at a private college, $52,000 each. An MBA he never finished, $48,000. Study abroad, to find himself, $35,000 I wired at midnight because he'd missed the deadline. I totaled the numbers, wrote them in the margin, and moved to the next folder. Kyle House. The day he brought Megan to our living room, flashing that ring like a victory flag. "We found the perfect place," he'd said. "Just need help with the down payment. Just." I co-signed the mortgage and wired $350,000, then paid the transfer taxes and unexpected closing costs he forgot to mention. Kyle wedding, $75,000, so Megan could have the string quartet, imported flowers, and a sparkler exit timed for photos. "It's our only wedding, Dad." He'd smiled when he said it. I believed him. Kyle emergencies. 47 emergencies. Over 15 years, new car tires, last-minute trips, a failed business venture Megan swore would change everything, medical bills for a sprained wrist. A puppy they couldn't afford. The puppy's training because they couldn't be bothered. Margaret's secret notebook slid from between the folders and landed on my lap. Her careful cursive filled every page. Anniversary dinner canceled. Sent $5,000 to Kyle for car repair. Postponed my doctor visit. Kyle's short on rent again. Bought generic groceries. Megan's birthday coming, sent something so she won't feel forgotten. Near the end, her hand had grown shaky. We gave Kyle everything. I hope he remembers us kindly. The total on my calculator blinked up at me. $847,000. Just shy of $1 million. The cost of raising a son who'd forgotten what love costs. I closed the notebook and looked around our home. The floral curtains she loved. The Bible by her bed. The coffee mug with lipstick ghosts. Margaret had been the soft voice in every hard season. She would tell me to be fair. She would tell me to be firm. At 9:12 a.m., my phone lit up. Kyle. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. "Hello, son." He sounded chipper, the way he always did when he needed something. "Hey, Dad, how are you holding up?" "Listen, Megan's party was amazing, big success. But, the band was pricier than expected, and we did steakhouse after. You know how it is, you only turn 32 once." A quick laugh, as if we were co-conspirators. "We're a little tight, just need about 15 grand to clear the cards. Can you wire it today? Megan gets stressed by bills." I stared at the stack of receipts, at Margaret's notebook open to a page that read, "Skipped my chemo day to watch the grandkids. Kyle had a meeting." The room hummed, the way a room hums when your blood is louder than the refrigerator. "No," I said. Silence, then a confused chuckle. "What do you mean, no? Is the bank transfer down?" "I mean no, Kyle. I won't be giving you money." His tone shifted, bright varnish cracking over rotten wood. "Dad, come on. Don't make this weird. We're family. You can afford it. And after the week we've had—" "The week we've had," I repeated softly, "included your mother's funeral. You chose a party." He exhaled hard, offended that I'd brought it up. "We've been over that. Mom's gone. Me being sad doesn't change it. Megan's birthday is once a year." I finished flatly. "You said that already." Megan's voice sharpened in the background. "Tell him we already spent it." "Kyle," I said, calm now, like when you realize the bridge is out and there's no point slamming the brakes. "You're 35. You have a job. You have a wife. You have responsibilities." He tried the guilt card, the surest card in his deck. "If Mom were here, she'd tell you to help us." "If Mom were here," I said, looking at her handwriting, "you would have been at her funeral." Another silence, longer, heavier. When he spoke, the mask was gone. "Fine, we'll manage without you, but don't expect us to come around much if this is how you're going to be." "I understand," I said. "You what?" "I understand. Take care, Kyle." I hung up before he could load another shell. The phone felt lighter in my hand, like a tool finally used as intended. For 35 years I'd been the bank, the safety net, the apology note for his choices. Margaret's kindness had always tempered my judgment. Without her, judgment stood alone. I opened my laptop and pulled up an HR dashboard I never thought I'd use for family. Foster construction management personnel. Kyle's profile smiled back at me in a suit I paid for, next to a list of missed deadlines, client complaints, Inflated expenses. I scrolled. 8 years of learning curves. Tomorrow, at the office, we would clarify the difference between father and employer. No shouting. No speeches. Just signatures and consequences. I closed the notebook gently and whispered to the empty room, "I'll be fair, Margaret. I promise." Then I set an alarm for 7 a.m., laid out my tie, and rehearsed the words I would say in the mirror, not as a grieving man, but as a man who finally understood that love without boundaries isn't love, it's permission. And tomorrow, permission ends. The next morning, the sky was still gray when I parked outside Foster Construction. I arrived 2 hours earlier than usual. The building eerily silent, except for the hum of the heating system. For decades, this place had been the symbol of my hard work, 40 years of sweat, sacrifice, and late nights. Today, it would become the stage for something I never thought I'd do, severing ties with my own son. I walked through the lobby and stopped at the framed wall of management portraits. Kyle's face grinned back at me in his suit, a photograph we'd taken after I handed him a position he had never truly earned. Back then, I'd believed giving him a role here would inspire responsibility. Instead, entitlement had taken root. Staring at that photo now, I didn't see promise anymore. I saw a boy who thought inheritance was his birthright. In my office, I spread his personnel files across my desk. 8 years of excuses, mistakes, and overlooked warnings. Contractors complaining about missed deadlines. Inflated expense reports with receipts for long lunches and client dinners that were anything but. Projects delayed because Kyle decided Megan needed a weekend getaway instead of his supervision. I had excused all of it, telling myself he just needed time to mature. Margaret had always whispered, "He's still learning, Alan. Don't be too hard on him." But she wasn't here to soften the truth anymore. At 8:45, I called in Sarah Mitchell, our HR director. She'd been documenting Kyle's negligence for months, waiting for the day I would finally stop pretending. Her expression showed no surprise when I told her. "I'll prepare the termination papers immediately," she said. Her voice carried quiet relief. "Do you want security on standby?" "Yes," I replied. "Standard protocol. He'll be treated like any other employee." Alone, I rehearsed my words in the office mirror. Calm, professional, stripped of sentiment. I wasn't here as his father today. I was his employer, and his employer was finished making excuses. At 9:30, Kyle strolled into the building 15 minutes late, coffee in hand, laughing loudly with the receptionist about his hangover from Megan's party. His voice carried down the hallway, smug and oblivious. Employees avoided his eyes as he passed. They all knew this day should have come years ago. "Kyle," I said through the intercom, "please come to my office immediately." "Sure, Dad. Just grabbing my coffee," he chuckled, using the casual tone that always grated when he was supposed to be working. "Now, Kyle." There was a pause. The weight in my voice must have told him this wasn't optional. His footsteps approached, slower than usual, and when the door opened, he froze at the sight of Sarah waiting with a folder of documents. His smile faltered. "What's all this?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but unease was already creeping in. I gestured to the chair. "Sit down." He stayed standing. "Dad, seriously, what's going on?" I folded my hands. "Kyle, your employment with Foster Construction is terminated, effective immediately." His laugh came out strained, almost theatrical. "Good one. What's this really about? Yesterday's phone call?" I slid the papers across the desk. "Read them. Sign where indicated." He scanned the legal language, color draining from his face. "You can't be serious. This is a family business." "This is a business," I corrected firmly, "and your performance has made this decision necessary." He leaned forward, dropping the pretense. "Dad, don't do this. Look, I screwed up asking for the money, I admit it. But firing me? Come on, we can fix this." "Security will escort you to collect your things," Sarah said quietly, stepping in before his panic escalated further. Kyle's desperation bled into manipulation. "Mom wouldn't want this. You know she wouldn't." I pressed the intercom. "Security to my office." The door opened, and Mike Thompson, our head of security, stepped inside. Professional, calm, ready. Kyle's face turned crimson. He looked around at the gathered employees lingering in the hallway, eyes wide as they watched the boss's son reduced to just another man escorted out of the building. "Dad, please," he said, voice cracking now. He clutched his coffee mug and a framed picture of Megan from his desk, clinging to something normal as the walls of entitlement closed in on him. "Think about what this means." "I have," I said. My voice was steady, colder than I'd ever imagined myself sounding to my own child. His protest died when Mike gently but firmly guided him toward the door. His shoulders slumped, his dignity spilling onto the floor with every step. Through my office window, I watched him load his belongings into his car, movements jerky with rage or despair. I couldn't tell which. He glanced back at the building one last time, expecting me to run after him. I turned away. Sarah returned with the signed paperwork. "All access revoked. His logins are terminated." "Good," I said. Then I walked to the management wall, removed his smiling photo, and placed it face down in a drawer. The blank space left behind didn't look empty. It looked clean. I barely had time to sit down before my secretary's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Foster, someone's here." She refused to wait for an appointment. The sound of sharp heels echoed in the hallway. The door burst open. Megan, perfectly styled but with fury twisting her face, stormed in like she owned the place. Kyle followed, defeated, silent, a shadow trailing behind his wife's rage. "How dare you humiliate him like this?" Megan spat, pointing at me with a trembling hand. I didn't stand. I didn't flinch. I simply leaned back in my chair and said, "This is a private workplace. You need to leave." Her lips curled into a sneer. "You think you can just erase him? You think you can erase us? We deserve severance. 6 months, at least. He gave 8 years to this company." "No," I said simply. Her voice rose, sharp enough to cut glass. "You're a bitter old man, Alan. Margaret would be ashamed of you." I looked at Kyle then. For a split second, I thought he might defend me, or at least ask her to stop. Instead, he lowered his eyes. And in that moment, I understood just how far gone my son really was. The real reckoning had only begun. Megan's words echoed off the office walls like venom. "Margaret would be ashamed of you," she hissed, daring me to break. For a heartbeat, I almost saw Margaret's gentle face, but then I looked at Kyle, my son, silent, standing behind his wife like a scolded child. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend his mother's memory. He didn't even defend himself. He just stared at the floor, letting Megan speak for both of them. "This is a private workplace," I repeated, keeping my voice calm. "You need to leave." Megan slammed her manicured hand against my desk. "You can't erase him from this company. This business is as much his as it is yours. We'll sue for wrongful termination. We'll take half of everything your company, your estate, your assets. Don't think for a second you can cast us aside." I pressed the intercom. "Security." Mike appeared in the doorway with 2 more men, their presence filling the room. Megan spun toward them, her voice rising into a shriek. "This is abuse. This is theft. You can't just throw us out." But they could. They were polite, but firm as they guided her out of the office, her words spilling like poison down the hallway. Employees peeked from behind doors, watching the drama unfold. They saw Megan being dragged out of the company she thought she owned, while Kyle trailed behind her, his face pale with humiliation. When the door finally closed, silence fell like a heavy curtain. Only Kyle remained, standing in front of my desk, shoulders hunched, eyes wet. He looked broken, but I knew better. I'd seen him use this performance before. "Dad," he whispered, voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I know I should have been at Mom's funeral. I was wrong. Please, don't do this to me. Don't cut me out. I'm all the family you have left." His words were designed to wound, to make me believe that without him, I was alone. But I stared at the man in front of me and realized something painful and liberating at the same time. "You're not my family," I said softly. "You're just someone." who used to be my son. Kyle's face collapsed. For the first time in years, I saw tears that weren't manipulative. He stumbled back, his lips parting as if to argue, but no words came out. He turned and left, and when the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Sarah returned with a stack of legal papers. "Everything's ready for your review," she said gently. I nodded, my voice steady. "Good. It's time to move forward." That afternoon, I sat across from Robert Chen, my old friend and attorney. His office smelled of polished wood and paper, the kind of place where serious decisions were made. He studied me carefully as I slid Margaret's will across his desk. "I want to make changes," I said. "Big ones." "Changes?" Robert raised an eyebrow. "To exclude Kyle?" "To remove him entirely," I confirmed. My tone left no room for doubt. "Every cent, every asset, every property. He gets nothing." Robert leaned back, visibly shaken. "Alan, that's permanent. You're sure about this?" I pulled out Margaret's journal, flipping to a page she had marked with her neat handwriting. "I'm worried Kyle only loves our money. What if we've raised a child who can't love at all?" I handed it to Robert. He read the line twice, his lips pressed into a grim line. When he looked back at me, he no longer questioned my decision. "All right," he said. "We'll draft a new will. Do you want to redirect your estate to someone else?" Yes. My answer was immediate. To the Margaret Foster Memorial Foundation, scholarships for underprivileged kids, cancer research, community programs, causes Margaret believed in. Robert's eyes softened with admiration. She would have been proud. We spent hours finalizing the details. My company assets would move into a trust. My house, eventually sold to benefit others. Margaret's jewelry, auctioned for charity, except her wedding ring. That would be buried with me. Every angle was covered, every loophole sealed. By the time I signed the documents in front of 2 witnesses, the decision was final. Kyle was legally disinherited, completely cut out. "Should I notify him formally?" Robert asked. "Yes," I said, a cold resolve in my chest. "I want him to see in writing exactly what his choices cost him." When I left Robert's office, the sun was setting over Davenport, golden light reflecting off the windows of buildings I'd helped construct. My phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from Kyle. I didn't bother listening to the voicemails. For the first time since Margaret's death, I felt peace. Not because I had punished my son, but because I had honored my wife. But peace was only temporary, because soon the whole town of Davenport would know the truth about Kyle's betrayal. And when they did, he wouldn't just lose me, he would lose everything. The news spread through Davenport like wildfire, faster than I could have imagined. At first, it was subtle whispers at the country club, sideways glances at the grocery store. But soon, it was everywhere. My son's absence at his own mother's funeral wasn't just gossip. It became the story that defined him. William Hayes, the president of the club, approached me one evening after a board meeting. "Alan," he said with a somber tone, "the members are talking. People noticed Kyle wasn't at Margaret's service. They're asking questions." I didn't lie. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them the truth, that Kyle had chosen Megan's birthday party over his mother's funeral. I repeated his exact words. "Mom's not coming back, but Megan's birthday is only once a year." The reaction was immediate and brutal. William's jaw clenched. Patricia Morton, Margaret's sister, went pale. Within hours, the story passed from one ear to another, until it became common knowledge across Davenport. The Ladies' Bridge Club whispered it between rounds. The Chamber of Commerce spread it during luncheons. By Sunday, even the pastor's sermon seemed to glance sideways at Kyle's sin. Megan was the first to feel the backlash. At her exclusive yoga studio, her instructor asked her to leave mid-session. "We prefer members who value family," she was told. She stormed out humiliated, only to discover her usual lunch table at Romano's had mysteriously been given away. Kyle's turn came next. At the golf course, his usual foursome suddenly canceled on him. At Bergdorf's boutique, Megan's platinum card was declined, her credit ruined when I pulled my guarantees. Former friends, who once drank with Kyle at the bar, now turned their backs when he walked in. Invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. It wasn't just my doing, it was the town itself, rejecting him. At home, the cracks in their marriage widened into craters. Megan paced the darkened living room, unpaid bills scattered on the coffee table. "You ruined us," she screamed. "You and your selfishness. You couldn't even show up for your mother." Kyle, once arrogant and untouchable, now sat hunched, staring at the floor. "Dad pulled everything. The business, the guarantees, the inheritance, it's all gone." "Then fix it," Megan snapped. "Go grovel, go beg. I didn't marry you to live like this." But Kyle had nothing left to bargain with. My lawyer had seen to that. Within weeks, foreclosure notices arrived at their door. The BMW was repossessed in broad daylight. Megan's jewelry was sold for scraps at garage sales. Neighbors watched as their perfect life unraveled piece by piece. I didn't need to lift a finger. The community and the banks did the work for me. Justice unfolded on its own. Finally, the day of the foreclosure auction arrived. I stood across the street in my black sedan, watching as Kyle and Megan clutched each other, pale and broken. Their dream home, the house I'd helped them buy, was sold in minutes. The winning bid came from my secretary, Sarah Mitchell, acting on behalf of my holding company. When Kyle recognized her, his face turned ashen. "That's Dad's lawyer," he whispered to Megan, his voice hollow. "He orchestrated this." And he was right. Every step, every piece of this downfall had been planned. When the gavel came down, sealing the sale, Megan screamed, "This is our home." But it wasn't. Not anymore. I stepped out of my car then, letting Kyle see me. His knees buckled. He understood at last not just that he'd lost his home, but that he'd lost everything. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. My silence spoke louder than any lecture could. Margaret had always told me, "Actions have consequences, Alan, and someday he'll have to face his." That day had come. But the story wasn't finished. Because even as Kyle hit rock bottom, he wasn't done with me yet. And what came next was the final breaking point.